Imagine waking up tomorrow morning to the news that your employer has given everyone in the company a 20% salary increase. At first, it sounds like the kind of news that could change your life. You start imagining fewer financial worries, more money in your savings account, maybe even finally buying the house you've been dreaming about. But then reality begins to catch up. Your rent has increased again. Grocery prices are higher than they were just a few months ago. Fuel costs more. Your electricity bill has gone up. Insurance premiums have quietly increased. Even a simple meal at your favorite restaurant now costs noticeably more than it did last year. Within a few months, that exciting pay raise no longer feels like a pay raise at all. Instead of feeling wealthier, you feel exactly the same, or maybe even worse. If you've ever experienced this, you're not alone. Millions of middle-class families around the world are asking the same question. Why does it feel like I'm working harder every year but getting nowhere financially? It's a question that rarely makes headlines, yet it affects nearly every household. The uncomfortable truth is that the middle class is being squeezed from every direction, and it's happening so gradually that most people don't even notice until years have passed. For decades, people believed in a simple formula for success: study hard, get a good education, find a stable job, work honestly, save your money, and eventually you'll build a comfortable life. That formula worked for many families in the past. One income could often support an entire household. Buying a home was achievable. Raising children didn't require constant financial anxiety. Retirement seemed like a realistic goal instead of a distant dream. But somewhere along the way, the rules quietly changed. Today, millions of people are following the exact same advice their parents were given. Yet the results are completely different. They're earning more money than previous generations in many cases, but somehow they feel poor. They postpone buying homes, delay starting families, rely on credit cards for unexpected expenses, and wonder why financial freedom always seems just out of reach. The first reason is something that affects every single person, whether they realize it or not. It's called inflation. Most people think inflation simply means that prices go up over time, but the reality is much more serious than that. Inflation quietly reduces the purchasing power of your money. In simple terms, every dollar you earn today buys a little less than it did yesterday. Imagine carrying a bucket of water with a tiny hole in the bottom. You keep pouring more water into the bucket, but it never seems to fill because water keeps leaking out. That's exactly how inflation works. Your salary may increase every year, but if the cost of living rises even faster, your financial situation doesn't improve. In fact, it slowly gets worse. Think about everyday life. A weekly grocery trip that used to cost $100 now costs significantly more. Utility bills continue climbing. Healthcare expenses increase almost every year. College tuition has become dramatically more expensive than it was a generation ago. Housing prices have risen much faster than wages in many cities, making homeownership feel impossible for young families. Even basic services like childcare, transportation, and insurance consume a larger percentage of household income than they once did. None of these increases happen overnight, which is exactly why they're so dangerous. Small price increases seem manageable individually, but together they create enormous financial pressure. Now imagine two workers. One earned $50,000 a year 10 years ago. Today, that same person earns $70,000. On paper, it looks like tremendous progress. Friends and family might even assume they're doing much better financially. But what if the cost of living increased by an even greater percentage during the same period? Suddenly, that higher salary doesn't represent greater wealth. It simply represents survival in a more expensive world. This is one of the biggest financial illusions affecting the modern middle class. People see larger numbers on their paychecks and assume they're becoming wealthier, when in reality they're simply running faster to stay in the same place. But inflation is only part of the story. There's another force quietly separating the wealthy from everyone else, and it's something most schools never teach. The rich don't become wealthy simply because they earn higher salaries. They become wealthy because they own assets. Assets are things that grow in value or generate income over time, such as businesses, stocks, real estate, or investments. While the average person depends almost entirely on a monthly paycheck, wealthy individuals often have money working for them 24 hours a day. Even while they sleep, their investments may continue generating income or increasing in value. Imagine two neighbors living on the same street. Both earn similar salaries, both work full-time, and both appear equally successful from the outside. The first neighbor spends every salary increase on a nicer car, a bigger television, expensive vacations, and luxury items that lose value over time. The second neighbor lives slightly below their means and invests the difference every month into diversified assets. 10 years later, their lives look completely different. The first person still depends on the next paycheck to maintain their lifestyle. The second has built a growing portfolio that produces income even when they're not working. The difference wasn't intelligence or luck. It was understanding the difference between spending money and owning assets. This is where many middle-class families unknowingly fall in a financial trap. Society encourages us to measure success by what we can buy rather than what we own. A bigger house, a luxury car, the newest smartphone, designer clothes, these become symbols of success. Social media makes the pressure even stronger, constantly showing us carefully edited versions of other people's lives. We compare ourselves to images of luxury without seeing the debt, financial stress, or sacrifices hidden behind those pictures. As incomes increase, lifestyles often increase even faster. Financial experts call this lifestyle inflation, and it's one of the greatest obstacles to long-term wealth. Every raise creates new expenses instead of new investments, leaving people trapped in an endless cycle of earning and spending. Here's the irony. The middle class works incredibly hard. They wake up early, commute long distances, work overtime, and sacrifice time with their families to earn more money. Yet many never feel financially secure because the system rewards ownership more than labor. Working harder can certainly increase your income, but owning valuable assets has the potential to multiply wealth over decades. That's why some people seem to become richer during difficult economic times, while others struggle just to keep up. The difference isn't always how much they earn, it's what they own. So if the real problem isn't simply low salaries, then why are so many people still chasing bigger paychecks as if they'll solve everything? And if the wealthy understand something about money that most people don't, why isn't it taught in schools or discussed openly? The answer becomes even more surprising when we uncover the hidden role that debt, consumer culture, and the modern financial system play in keeping millions of middle-class families trapped in a cycle that feels almost impossible to escape. And once you see how the system really works, you'll never look at money the same way again. If there's one tool that has quietly reshaped the financial lives of the middle class over the last few decades, it's debt. At first glance, debt doesn't seem dangerous at all. In fact, modern society presents it as something completely normal. Want a new car? Finance it, dreaming of a bigger house, take out a mortgage. Need the latest smartphone? Pay for it in monthly installments. Planning a vacation you can't quite afford? Put it on a credit card. Everywhere you look, you're encouraged to enjoy today and worry about paying tomorrow. The problem is that tomorrow always arrives with interest, and over time, that interest becomes one of the biggest obstacles to building real wealth. Most people believe their largest expense is taxes, but for millions of families, the hidden cost of interest payments quietly consumes far more money than they realize. Every dollar spent paying interest is a dollar that can no longer be invested, saved, or used to create future opportunities. This is why two people with the exact same income can end up in completely different financial situations. One owns assets that generate income, while the other spends years paying interest on liabilities that continue losing value. Think about the average middle-class lifestyle. You graduate from school with student loans. You finance your first car because public transportation isn't practical. A few years later, you buy a home with a mortgage that stretches over decades. Then come furniture payments, credit cards, personal loans, subscriptions, insurance, and monthly bills that slowly multiply until your paycheck already has a destination before it even reaches your bank account. By the end of the month, you wonder where all your money disappeared. The truth is, it didn't disappear, it was already promised to someone else. This creates what many financial experts call the paycheck to paycheck cycle. It's not always caused by low income. Sometimes it's caused by too many financial commitments that quietly grow over time. The financial industry understands something that most consumers never think about. Small monthly payments feel affordable even when the total cost is enormous. A dealership rarely asks whether you can comfortably afford a $40,000 car. Instead, they ask if you can manage $600 a month. Streaming services don't advertise their yearly cost. They highlight a tiny monthly fee. Credit card companies don't focus on the long-term interest you'll pay. They emphasize minimum monthly payments. Piece by piece, these seemingly harmless expenses stack together until they consume a large portion of your income. This is one of the biggest psychological tricks in personal finance. People don't buy based on total price anymore. They buy based on monthly affordability, and that's exactly why so many households earn good incomes while still feeling financially trapped. And there's lifestyle inflation, one of the most overlooked reasons why people struggle to build wealth. Imagine receiving a promotion that increases your annual salary by $10,000. Instead of investing that extra income, many people immediately upgrade their lifestyle. They move into a larger apartment, lease a newer car, dine out more often, purchase luxury items, and increase their monthly spending without even noticing it. Within a year, that raise has completely disappeared, not because they became wealthier, but because their expenses rose to match their income. The cycle repeats every few years. Every promotion brings a better lifestyle, but not greater financial security. From the outside, it looks like success. Inside, nothing has changed except the size of the monthly bills. Social media has made this problem even worse. Every day, we're surrounded by carefully edited images of expensive vacations, luxury cars, designer clothing, and beautiful homes. Rarely do we see the financial reality behind those pictures. We don't see the loans, the credit card balances, the sleepless nights, or the stress of maintaining a lifestyle that's built on debt instead of wealth. Human beings naturally compare themselves with others. When everyone around us appears to be living a more luxurious life, we feel pressure to keep up, even if it means sacrificing our financial future. This phenomenon has a name: lifestyle comparison. It's one of the most expensive habits in modern society because it encourages spending for appearance rather than long-term financial freedom. Meanwhile, the wealthy often approach money in a completely different way. Instead of asking, what can I buy with this money? They ask, how can this money make more money? That single difference changes everything. Rather than spending every extra dollar, they look for opportunities to invest in businesses, stocks, real estate, or other productive assets. They understand that wealth isn't created by constantly upgrading your lifestyle, it's created by increasing the number of assets you own. Over time, those assets begin producing income of their own, reducing dependence on a monthly paycheck. This is why many wealthy individuals become financially stronger during economic uncertainty, while others struggle just to maintain their standard of living. Another reason the middle class feels financially squeezed is that wages often grow much more slowly than the value of assets. Imagine someone who bought a modest home 20 years ago. Over time, that property's value may have doubled or even tripled in certain areas. Investors who consistently purchased quality stocks saw many of their investments appreciate over decades as businesses expanded and economies grew. Business owners benefited as their companies increased in value. But families who relied only on salaries often saw much smaller gains. They worked hard every year, yet the biggest wealth-building opportunities happened in the ownership of assets rather than in earned income. This creates a growing wealth gap that becomes more noticeable with every passing decade. Perhaps the most frustrating part is that none of this happens overnight. There's no single moment when a middle-class family suddenly becomes poor. Instead, financial pressure builds quietly over many years. A little more debt here, a slightly higher grocery bill there. Rising housing costs, more expensive healthcare, increasing insurance premiums, higher education expenses. Small changes that seem manageable individually eventually combine into a financial burden that feels overwhelming. By the time people recognize what's happening, they often believe they've simply failed at managing money. But the reality is more complicated. Many are navigating an economic environment where building wealth requires a completely different strategy than it did for previous generations. This doesn't mean the middle class is doomed. It means the old financial playbook is no longer enough. Working hard is still important, but hard work alone doesn't automatically create wealth. Understanding how money flows, how assets grow, and how debt quietly steals future income has become just as important as earning a paycheck. The people who succeed financially over the next decade won't necessarily be those with the highest salaries. They'll be the ones who understand how to keep more of what they earn, invest consistently, avoid unnecessary debt, and let time work in their favor instead of against them. But even if you avoid debt, control your spending, and invest wisely, there's another hidden force quietly reducing the purchasing power of your money every single year. It's a force that most people underestimate, yet it influences everything from the price of your groceries to the cost of buying a home. Understanding this final piece of the puzzle may completely change the way you think about building wealth. Because once you see how the financial system really works, you'll realize why some people continue getting richer while millions of hardworking families struggle just to stand still. Now let's talk about the final piece of the puzzle, the one that quietly shapes almost every financial decision you make, yet receives surprisingly little attention. It's the simple fact that the financial system rewards ownership far more than effort. For generations, people were taught that if they worked hard, stayed loyal to one company, and saved money in a bank account, financial security would naturally follow. That advice made sense in a different era when the cost of living was lower, housing was more affordable, and savings accounts earned meaningful interest. But today's economy operates by a different set of rules. Simply earning and saving money is no longer enough because the value of cash slowly declines over time while productive assets continue growing. Every year that your money sits idle, inflation quietly reduces its purchasing power. Meanwhile, businesses expand, real estate appreciates over the long term in many markets, and diversified investments have historically grown alongside economic development. This is why many wealthy families become even wealthier without working significantly longer hours. Their money is invested in assets that continue producing value long after the work has been done. Think about two friends who both saved $10,000. The first keeps the money in a basic savings account for years because it feels safe. The second invests carefully over the long term, allowing compound growth to work year after year. At first, the difference between them seems almost invisible, but as the years pass, that gap begins to widen. Eventually, the second person's investments may start generating returns that exceed what the first person earns through additional months of hard work. This is one of the most powerful lessons in personal finance. Time is often more valuable than timing. People spend countless hours searching for the perfect investment or waiting for the perfect economic conditions, but many overlook the incredible advantage of simply starting early and remaining consistent. Unfortunately, most schools spend years teaching mathematics, history, and science while dedicating very little time to practical financial education. Many young adults enter the workforce knowing how to solve complex equations, but not how taxes work, how compound growth builds wealth, how credit scores affect borrowing costs, or how investing can transform their financial future. As a result, people learn about money through trial and error, often making expensive mistakes before discovering the principles that could have helped them from the beginning. Financial literacy isn't about becoming rich overnight. It's about understanding how everyday decisions compound over decades. Small habits repeated consistently can produce extraordinary results, just as small financial mistakes repeated consistently can quietly destroy wealth. The good news is that building wealth doesn't require earning millions of dollars. It requires making smarter decisions with the money you already have. That begins with living below your means instead of constantly trying to impress others. It means avoiding unnecessary high-interest debt whenever possible. It means creating an emergency fund so unexpected expenses don't force you into financial crisis. It means investing consistently instead of waiting for the perfect moment. It means developing valuable skills that increase your earning potential over time. Most importantly, it means buying assets before buying luxuries. Wealthy people often delay expensive purchases because they understand that assets create future income, while many liabilities create future expenses. Once your assets begin generating reliable cash flow, luxuries become far easier to afford without damaging your financial future. Another habit shared by financially successful people is long-term thinking. Modern culture encourages instant gratification. We want immediate results, fast deliveries, quick profits, and overnight success, but real wealth rarely works that way. Businesses grow over years, investments compound over decades, and financial independence is usually the result of thousands of disciplined decisions rather than one lucky opportunity. Every dollar invested today has the potential to become significantly more valuable in the future. Every unnecessary expense avoided today creates room for future investments. Every financial habit you develop becomes part of a system that either moves you closer to freedom or keeps you trapped in the cycle of earning and spending. This is why comparing yourself to others can be so dangerous. You may see someone driving an expensive luxury car without realizing they're struggling under enormous debt. You may envy someone living in a beautiful house without knowing the financial stress behind those monthly payments. True wealth isn't measured by appearances. It's measured by freedom. Freedom to choose how you spend your time, freedom to handle emergencies without panic, freedom to retire with dignity, freedom to help your family without sacrificing your own future. These are the rewards of building assets instead of simply collecting possessions. The middle class isn't failing because people have become lazy or irresponsible. In fact, many middle-class families work harder than ever before. The challenge is that the economic landscape has changed dramatically. Rising living costs, inflation, consumer debt, and the increasing importance of asset ownership have created a system where traditional advice alone is no longer enough. Working hard remains important, but understanding how money works has become equally essential. The people who thrive over the next 20 years won't necessarily be those with the highest incomes. They'll be the people who continue learning, investing wisely, adapting to economic changes, and making financial decisions based on long-term value rather than short-term comfort. So what should you do starting today? Begin by tracking where your money actually goes every month. Build an emergency fund before chasing luxury purchases. Eliminate high-interest debt as quickly as possible. Invest consistently, even if the amount seems small. Continue improving your skills so your income can grow over time. Focus on owning assets that appreciate or generate income instead of liabilities that constantly drain your finances. And perhaps most importantly, remember that wealth is not built in a single year. It's built through patience, discipline, and thousands of smart decisions repeated over decades. The future of the middle class hasn't been decided yet. Every day, millions of people have the opportunity to make one better financial choice than they made yesterday. Those small choices may not feel significant at first, but over time, they create remarkable differences. The journey to financial freedom doesn't begin with winning the lottery or discovering a secret investment. It begins with understanding the game you're playing, because once you understand the rules, you stop chasing the illusion of looking rich and start building the reality of becoming wealthy. If this video changed the way you think about money, remember that knowledge is only valuable when it's applied. Start today, learn continuously, invest consistently, think long-term. Your future self will thank you for every smart financial decision you make from this moment forward. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Because the more people understand how money truly works, the stronger their financial future can become.